Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the Executive Director for the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today, Preparing Yourself and Your Adult Students for Success in WIOA, Teaching Best Career Practices with Workwise. I'm going to go through a few slides here. I'd like to let everybody know that all webinar participants will receive a certificate of participation, and also that all materials that are shared during this webinar will be posted to our website. Additionally, you can download a number of resources from our webinar and previous webinars on our Adult Educators repository, and we'll put that link that's right here, we'll put that in the chat box. Additionally, I would just like to mention that we have upcoming our virtual conference. We've had over 14 states sign on. We expect about anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 attending the virtual conference on October 25th and 26th. And you're welcome to go to coabe.org and click on Professional Development and Virtual Conference for more details. As well, we have our national conference coming up in Phoenix, Arizona on March 25th through the 28th. We'd love for you to be able to join us there. And all members of COABE will be able to apply for mini grants to defray the cost of registration. As many of you know, we have a national public awareness campaign that's underway, and that's at educateandelevate.org. I just would like to mention that we've had over 15,000 contacts with legislators since we launched this. So everybody is out there, they're connecting with their legislator, and you can go to this website here, and you're welcome to download more information, including our campaign toolkit in honor of Adult Ed and Family Literacy Week. Additionally, we have a journal that's been 40 years that we've been publishing that, and right now our partner is Rutgers University, and this journal provides a lot of interesting and informative articles on research to practice. I would like to mention that our webinar is sponsored by New Readers Press, and Sue Willie is here from New Readers Press. Sue Willie, would you like to say a few words?
Everyone to today's webinar. New Readers Press is pleased to sponsor this webinar and to have Cynthia Campbell present information to you on WIOA guidelines and how our new Workwise series can be integrated into your programs to prepare adult learners for job exploration, interview prep, success on the job, and to bring work-related academic skills into the classroom. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to type them into the chat box, and we're going to review them at the end. So let's get started, and here is Cynthia Campbell.
Hi everyone, I'm Cynthia Campbell. I am with Gold Apple Services, but I also worked on this project with New Readers Press, and I think Sharon had a few words.
I do. Well, thank you. First of all, before we go any further, I want to thank New Readers Press for their sponsorship. And Sue, thank you for your words just a few minutes ago. This webinar is made possible by New Readers Press, so all of our members are able to attend free of charge thanks to their sponsorship. Additionally, Cynthia Campbell here has been working for over 25 years in adult education. She's taught both in ESOL and ABE classrooms, and she has directed an urban adult literacy program, developed curricula, provided professional development, and been a presenter many, many times over at our national conference. So Cynthia, we want to thank you and welcome you. We're delighted that you're our featured presenter. So with that, Cynthia Campbell.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for attending the webinar and taking some time out of your week to engage this topic. So I'm just going to get up my screen so that you can see good. I think I'm doing this correctly, and I'm going to stop the video so that you can concentrate on the PowerPoint. So first of all, you've heard a little bit about me, but I would love to know a little bit about you all who are attending this webinar right now. So what we're asking you to do is, if you would put something in the chat box, just use that chat box and just give us your name, where you're located, what state you're from, And whether you're a teacher or transitions coordinator or another kind of administrator, if you could just kind of tell us what your kind of role is in adult education, it would be helpful for us to know how best to answer your questions. So if you can just take a couple minutes, just a minute to do that while I do some other introductory comments. So I am actually going to start us off on a true-false quiz. I'm hoping that okay, let me just see if I'm, sorry. We're going to start with a true-false quiz, which is not what I would use in a classroom, but is something I'll share with you now. So we're going to look at some true-false questions. Number one, the first thing a job seeker should do is write a resume. Think about this. Is it true or false? Number two, just looking for any job is an effective way to do a job search. True or false? Job seekers only need to create one resume. True or false? The best way to find jobs is through answering job ads. True or false? A job seeker's online presence is not important. True or false? There is no way to prepare for a job interview. True or false? And finally, once a job seeker accepts an offer, the job process is over. True or false? Let's see. Guess what? All of them are false. And let me just give you a little context for this. First of all, the first thing that a job seeker should not do is to write the resume. Instead, a job seeker really needs to do some self-inventory, work hard at figuring out where he or she wants to go with his or her career at the time. It's tempting to think just get a resume together, but a lot of thought, as you know, goes into resumes. And you need to do a lot of research and self-reflection. The second one is just looking for any job is an effective way to do a job search. This is false because people really want to have a focus for your job search so you find the right kind of position for yourself. Just randomly scattering resumes to any port in the storm isn't going to work. Now, next one is job seekers only need to create one resume. Well, this was true in the 1980s, but now we know that we have to contextualize each resume we send out to a employer, to that employer. Now, number four, the best way to find jobs is through answering job ads. That's false. Usually the best way to find jobs is through networking. No matter what level you are, networking is often the best way to find a new position. Number five, a job seeker's online presence is not important. Well, we've all heard about what Facebook and LinkedIn what a bad Facebook post can do to your job, your current job, or your future employment. There is no way to prepare for a job interview. Actually, there's lots of good ways to prepare for job interviews, and we will talk about how one can prepare for common job interview questions. And number seven, when a job seeker accepts an offer, the job process is over. That's false. As we know, in today's economy, in today's life, a person's likely to have several jobs through the course of a career rather than one or two for several years. The concept of working for one place for 30 years is largely an antiquated situation. So, why should you all as adult educators, instructors care about this? And our main answer is WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. I'm sure most of you have heard about WIOA and all the aspects of it, but I would love to see what does WIOA mean to you? What are you thinking that WIOA means to your life? So can you put something into the chat box and let us know what you're finding that WIOA means to you? And I'm going to take a quick look at the chat box and see what people have said. What does WIOA? Drives most of my work, collaboration, workforce development, direction, collaboration, prepare. Okay, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of great things here on this. So it looks like you may already know all this material without my help. Let me get back to the webinar. Okay, so I'm glad that people have been thinking deeply about WIOA. It is really something that is driving the future of adult literacy education, and we all have to pay attention to WIOA. But I'm going to give you some refreshers just to work together on this. So going into a little boring policy talk. I'm going to try to make this go forward. Whoops. A little boring policy talk, but hang in there, please. As we know, WIOA was passed by Congress in July 2014. There's an even stronger emphasis on work readiness and gaining employment. It impacts various public services like TANF, SNAP, Department of Social Services, American Job Centers, and us, Adult Education and Family Literacy. Incidentally, Congress authorized an annual budget of $649 WIOA Title II, but thus far, much less money has been put towards adult education. Unfortunately, this is unlikely to change, but with the Educate and Elevate campaign, if you participate in that, with all of us working together, we can put the onus on Congress to invest the full $649 million for adult education. So check out Educate and Elevate, and please support that. So some key WIOA principles. Key WIOA principles: review, develop, or modify competency models with employers and develop and validate career ladders and lattices. So trying to find multiple ways to bring people into career development. Develop or modify programs to ensure they meet industry recognized credentials. Here's where it gets really important to us. Provide career services, case management, and comprehensive support services. This includes helping people with their resumes and cover letters and all of those good things. And then here's where this one I think is really key for us. Developing integrated, accelerated, contextualized learning strategies. And I think this is an opportunity for us to really work on doing some high interest work with our students on their particular goals and their particular dreams, to at the same time they can be working on developing academic skills and deepening critical thinking skills. An overarching principle of WIOA is that various agencies are to collaborate. We saw a lot of this in the most recent grants. It's important for us to be collaborating with workforce, employers. There's a whole slew of people that we all need to work together to serve the client. The goal is for people to obtain the services they need in a seamless and not just disjointed process. Here's an example. A worker at an American Job Center should be able to connect a learner with an adult education with a minimum of testing and duplication of intake. So trying to avoid the incessant testing and incessant paperwork and kind of having people bounce around like ping pong balls. So we know how frustrating it is when we encounter situations where we're told to go to one place, then to another, and a certain amount of confusion. That can be even more overwhelming for our students, our learners, and cutting down on that is really an important aspect of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. By mandate of the WIOA law, federal and state various agencies have developed plans for agencies to collaborate to serve clients. I know that we're doing this very seriously here in Maryland. In competitive grants, adult education directors had to show how they will collaborate with other WIOA partners. Now, here's my however. My big however is the real success of WIOA will be what happens on the so-called front lines. And this is where we start talking about you all. I want to talk to you about the importance of the adult education instructor to the success of WIOA. First of all, adult learners spend the most amount of time with their instructors. The instructor may be the primary example of a professional that an adult learner encounters. Adult learners are likely to reach out first to their instructors with concerns and questions. So you're really the people, those of you who are instructors, you are the people that will, I think, really make WIOA work. Therefore, instructors need to understand the various options that an adult learner has to obtain the ultimate gain, accessing a career path. Instructors serve as models to help adult learners learn employability skills, including soft skills. Instructors can also encourage adult learners in articulating goals and accessing other resources. So you're kind of, in many ways, you're the linchpin to make sure they can access a transition person if you have a transitions person, or other resources. So here we're looking at the transition from education to employment. This is ultimately the goal with WIOA. So we're going to be talking about 21st century soft skills. Not everybody loves the term soft skills, but it is a helpful term to talk about some of the things other than the hard skills that people need to succeed in a workplace. So let's talk about some general common soft skills that people are looking at. This is what employers want almost more than anything else. Strong work ethic, positive attitude, good communication skills, time management abilities, including being on time, problem-solving skills, acting as a team player, self-confidence, ability to accept and learn from criticism, flexibility, and working well under pressure. And what I would also add myself is the whole notion of being able to be an independent learner and able to learn new skills. In today's economy, it doesn't work for people just to learn one set of skills and you're done. Learning is a lifetime process. So this is where we as adult educators can help our students become independent learners. Rather than consumers of content, they learn skills that they can use in multiple settings. So wait a second. You want to know how all this employability content stuff may fit in with teaching academic or critical thinking skills. We're going to work on finding some answers together, and I'll try to pull some of that out to see how this all works together. So I am going to ask you a little something here. This is a common interview questions. I would like you to raise your hand and let me know how many of you have faced this question as in an interview. So raise your hand, let us know how many of you have faced this question. Now I want you to think about, how did it make you feel? I think most people, including myself, when I've been faced with this question, tell me about yourself, I have kind of go, and I fumble through the question. It's a very intimidating question, but let's talk about it for a second. I'm going to go to, it's a dreaded interview question. Tell me about yourself. What's going on here? Most professionals really don't know how to answer this question well and are often unprepared. And if they are wise, they will get coaching to prepare a good answer for this question. I myself received a certain amount of instruction on how to work with this question when you find it in interviews, because it is a common question. It's kind of, they think it's an easy softball question. So with questions like that, if the job search is intimidating for professionals, how does it make adult learners feel? contemplate that for a second. If it's intimidating for us as professionals, how does it make adult learners feel? Now, I'm going to tell you something about that dreaded interview question. Tell me about yourself, because what they are not interested in when an employer asks you about this question, they're not interested in knowing whether you own 3 or 4 cats, or what color your house is, or any of that stuff. What they're really asking, the question, as teachers, we've learned to look for the question behind the question. So what they're really asking is, tell me what you would be like as an employee. That's what they're really asking. And that's how you learn how to frame your answer to that question. So I want you to consider something for a second. And I want you to think about, when did you conduct your last job search and what was it like? If you've conducted your last job search more than 10 years ago, I'm going to tell you that it's a whole new world. How did it make you feel? Well, I'll tell you how it made me feel in terms of doing a job search process, which I did a few years ago. It's very daunting and frustrating. It's a difficult process between figuring out how to answer the key questions, dealing with applicant tracking software, which we discuss in Workwise. There's just a whole lot of things in it. So it can be daunting and frustrating for any one of us. And it's likely to be really daunting and frustrating for adult learners, especially if they're coming from corrections. But if they've never dealt with a job search process before, it is a daunting process. However, there's good news. However, these skills can be taught while reinforcing critical thinking, and I'm also going to say reflection skills. And Workwise can be a part of, Workwise is designed to help. So I'm going to talk about the Workwise series. In the first 3 books, we're terming the soft skills, but it's more than just talking about soft skills in the sense of, I'm going to tell you the various things you need to do, be on time and all that. That's not exactly how we're doing this. What we're doing is we're teaching various career planning, job search strategies while reinforcing reading, critical thinking, reflection, writing skills. And I want to say that I really felt privileged to provide the writing for this part of the series. So what I will say to you before I get into this slide was, one thing I want you to think about is that so often when we work with our adult learners, we tend to work on it's tempting to work on the deficit model, what they don't have, what they don't know, what they're lacking. Part of what we're doing in Workwise is we are looking at the asset model as to what they have. What can they leverage? So you'll see some of that features in our materials. So we're looking at in our Workwise features instructions and best practices in job acquisition and career planning. These are the kind of things that get taught to career professionals at a great price. But what we've done is contextualize it for adult learners. We utilize open-ended exercises that encourage adult learners to think critically about and apply principles to their lives. Rarely is there the one right answer. Learners are to work on responses that fit their characteristics, abilities, and their lives. And we provide encouragement and guidance in determining learners' strengths. Another thing we feature is a lot of graphic organizers to help learners analyze ideas and priorities. I remember having an interesting dialogue with one of my learners at the Urban Literacy Program. She thought that graphic organizers were only used with students in adult literacy programs, and I explained to her that a lot of executives and actually use similar kind of things. We give guidance and models for creating cover letters and resumes. we reference a variety of websites to extend learning. That's a key part of what we do in Workwise. And we have a great number of free supplemental online resources that are reproducible. And we also, anything we mention as a link in the booklet itself, there's a link to it from our website. And what's really nice, and I say this as someone who ran a program, it's reasonably priced so each learner can have his or her own copy. So you're not going to have to break the bank to get this kind of material for your learners. So here's a partial list of skills that students use in Workwise in the soft skills section, and they will in the academic section. So I'm just going to show that to you, but you see a couple key ones of persuasive narrative writing, researching a topic, and applying ideas. All of these are skills that they do need for the high school completion programs, but it's also skills that they can use in this context, in a kind of a high interest context. So let me talk about the first book in the series. It's called Choosing a Job. In Unit 1, we really focus on building confidence. We don't dive right into the resume. We talk about building confidence, what it means to have a positive attitude, working on building your resilience, looking at inventorying your skills. Unit 2, exploring career options and talking about where you are now, what's important to you, thinking about your ideal job, and looking at what would be a career that matches your abilities and your context. And then we get into marketing skills about creating an attention-grabbing resume, writing the winning cover letter, and we also discuss and give some guidance on using social media. So I'm going to show you some examples, and you can see in here we have one about SMART goals. So we do introduce the notion of SMART goals with our students. And you can see that we have an exercise here, SMART or not. But I will say to you that I also, when I worked with my own students, I created an exercise on SMART goals that if you would like it, if you email me, you'll see my email at the end of the session. If you email me, I'll send you a copy of that little SMART goal exercise and you can use it with your learners. Another example exercise, you can see here where you're talking about problem solving and learning from your own mistakes. So often we can get into this theme of blaming ourselves and just being negative. This is about learning how can you learn from mistakes. So it's a problem solving thing. But I also want to point out to you that you can see that there's vocabulary terms that are defined in context. So we do a certain amount of we introduce the vocabulary and we define it in context throughout this program. Another example exercise. Here's where, as they're working towards thinking about careers, they can start listing potential jobs or careers and thinking about what ideas they have, starting to narrow down what direction they ought to go. Now, if you look real closely on the screen, I know it's a little tiny, but we utilize ONET, and you can see ONET in here. And My Next Move, we also use Bureau of Labor Statistics. So these are things where people can do some research to really look at what's hot as a job prospect in your local community, etc. Here's another example exercise. You have to narrow down to, you're having to synthesize and narrow down. Okay, here's another just putting together materials for the resume. And you can see the exercise is putting together your contact information. Marketing skills. The one important exercise is working on developing the professional summary. Used to be you would put an objective on a resume. Now you're really expected to kind of put a little professional summary. This is a short version of the tell me about yourself question. And so this is something where we do a lot of work in here to lead them to the point where they can start synthesizing that information. Okay, here's one of our supplemental online resources for this program. We actually have a template for the resume at New Readers Press Workwise. You'll find a lot of great resources there, but that's one of them is a template that is in Word document that the students can use. Next one is the Workwise Getting a Job. Here's where we talk about conducting the job search and understanding the hiring process. Which really comes down to in the hiring process is getting to be known as part of the pool of best known candidates. An employer is more likely to hire someone that he or she knows can do the job, a known quantity, and advertising is usually almost the last resort for finding someone to take a position. We have preparing for interviews and interviewing to win. Now here's one exercise, identifying keywords in an ad. We talked about this before. This is critical not just as a reading skill, but for people to understand that they have to use those keywords in the resumes and cover letters in order for the resume to be seen by a human person. So this is a critical skill in job search. Here is another little exercise for people to be able to create a short little business card that they can use in networking. This is a common deal to do when you're doing job searches. Create yourself a business card so that you can have people contact you and you can network. Here's another example exercise. This really gets into the soft skills sense of finding a point of commonality between yourself and an interviewer. So this is a case where this exercise is using a graphic organizer for students to think about what commonalities they might have with this fictional interviewer, Rick Scott, and looking at what you might be able to utilize in small talk. Another exercise here is a time management, thinking about what it would take to get to the interview on time. And so here you have the person arriving at 9:15. What time does one need to leave the house in order to make that all happen? So that's a kind of an exercise one needs to do, and they can do it with their own context, thinking about a fictional place and how much time they would need and when would they need to leave their house in order to reach that interview on time. We also have some other graphic organizers thinking about your nonverbal communication and thinking about your selling points and how to articulate your selling points. One of my favorite supplemental online resources is we have interview questions. And what's nice about these interview questions is they can practice them just as interview questions, but they are also great resources to use as writing prompts for journal writing or essays or paragraphs. These are things that getting your students to think about this on a continual basis is important, will help build their confidence and skills and make them better prepared for their career process. And then finally, we have in the first 3 of the series, Workwise, Starting a Job. And this is about getting ready for your new job, thinking about the job offer, starting strong from day one, building success. So here, this is a fun exercise. There's a link on here to a place where you could actually look and compare salaries. This is a real website. And you can look and see what's the average, what's the median, what's the high, what's the low range for salaries in your area for a particular field and versus the country. So this is really kind of knowing whether or not you're getting offered something, whether the offer you're getting is reasonable or not. I think most of us wish we had that. You know, negotiating salary is right up there with going to the dentist in terms of fun. Example exercise, here's another one. On soft skills with dealing with emails. Now, we have seen, here are some statements below, and I think we all can use a little help with our soft skills sometimes with our emails. But these are just a little exercise on knowing what to send and what not to send as emails. Here's another one on about sharpening soft skills, and it breaks it down in various components and talks about how you taking a look at yourself and how you can improve. Another supplemental, there's more supplemental online resources, and this shows up in the book, but it's also a supplemental sheet where you can think about the career goal and whether you're making the right steps towards it. So when you're contemplating an offer, say, for example, you're contemplating 2 offers and one really can reinforce your direction to your career goal and the other one not so much. That's a factor in deciding about what job to take or even what job to apply to. Now, Workwise has a new set of materials coming out on academic skills. And the second half of this series will focus on reading, writing, and math skills, and they'll be contextualized. This is more of the direct skill focus of these academic skills. And they'll be contextualized with specific occupational examples and activities that are in real-world situations. So there's a lesson layout. These are very structured. You have lessons that begin with a lesson goal, description of skill and why it's important. You have, it's modeled in the context of a workplace activity. The skill is followed by 3 practice activities using authentic workplace situation. Vocabulary review. As we know, vocabulary building is so important, and reflection exercises. So here in reading for work, which is the first in this second half of the series, you have various reading skills reinforced here, and here's some of the contextualized fields that we're going to be talking about: manufacturing, construction, consumer business, hospitality, healthcare, transportation, customer service. Here's an example of a reading skill, reading a diagram. This is using fans and its parts. So those are always, we always have to work on these kind of skills of reading diagrams. I know sometimes I still struggle with it, but this is really good. This is a good example, something for students to work on dealing with diagrams. Another one here is understanding inference and conclusion. So you have an example of where you work on the inference skills, which are always a challenge with students to develop. Another one here, reading a chart, dealing with looking at a schedule and what needs to be done. So you can see this is a schedule from a patient care chart. Here you have a comparing and contrasting exercise. Again, some more work with charts. With writing for work, this is really nice. You have 10 lessons and 8 tools that focus on writing activities and grammar skills. And so you have in here various forms of workplace writing, which you can see contextualized to the occupations. You have 8 specific writing tools with examples to enhance workplace and basic writing skills. Again, building vocabulary, which is critical. And the lessons include writing checklists, which I really like this concept of having rubrics so that the learners can monitor their own learning and kind of judge their own writing. So you have some examples here. This in case is an email, and you can see about talking about tone, short and to the point. Here we have certain writing tools and working on correcting sentence fragments and subject-verb agreement. Those are really key elements that we always need to reinforce with our learners, and they have a nice program here. Writing and sequencing instructions. So being able to sequence something, this is a key writing skill, and it translates nicely into high school completion programs, because often the essays, like for the science piece for the GED exam, is talking about putting together a science protocol. That's sequencing. Same thing here. So those skills are transferable. Some more on writing reports and looking at food instructions for food service and hospitality. And again, we talked about vocabulary, and here's that nice writing checklist, a little rubric, a simple rubric to help students know where they're going and how they're doing. Again, emails and reports, customer service and food service, and how this looks. So learners really get a sense of how do these skills look in application in their environment. Now, the one that's coming soon, it's still in process, but in October, there will be math for work. And this will involve review basic math skills, vocabulary building, the importance of math and problem solving in the workplace, and strategies for thinking through the math process. So when your student asks, why should I care about math and how will I use it? This was a good resource. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how to use Workwise. So I have a number of options here, and I want you to kind of think of your own ideas. But first of all, I think Workwise could be used as textbooks for employability and soft skill training. So if you do have an employability class at your location, these can be really good resources to go through with your students, and they will have it in their hands. So it can be used in that sense. It can also be used to enhance career exploration activities. But I also would contend that this can be incorporated into your adult basic skills classes, where when you have people doing reading and writing and math, they can do it in a high interest, contextualized fashion that will hopefully they will see how it applies to their lives. As adult instructors, that a key part of adult learning is seeing how this can apply to one's life. Also with Workwise, you can teach certain digital literacy instruction or build digital literacy skills through looking at job postings, company explorations, the websites, and also some of the websites that we've introduced, like from the American Job Centers, looking at those sites and seeing how they can learn about various careers. So that really builds research skills in a digitally rich environment. And then strengthening the visual and graphic literacy skills. We showed you certain examples of graphs and graphic organizers and charts and even like the fan exercise for them to build those skills. Here's another way you can use Workwise. Workwise can be used with students for independent study under the mentorship of an instructor or coach. So if you're having someone who's meeting with the transitions person and needing to do some work and working with the transitions person, this could be something you could do. So a student can work on a chapter on his or her own, then meet with the coach or instructor to review and discuss the answers. So in that sense, it can be done independently, but most times I really think these materials ought to be used in a way where there's a certain amount of encouragement and mentorship and instructor input, so that students have that continual motivation. Here are some other exercises that can be integrated into regular ABE classes. You have persuasive writing, writing a cover letter or professional summary is example of persuasive writing. Sequencing and timelines, bring up the job history, including volunteer work. Don't forget that volunteer work can be a way of building experience. Journal writing, paragraph prompts or essay prompts, answering interview questions, researching, and creating LinkedIn profiles. Students can apply technology and writing skills, and LinkedIn profiles are free. Now, I have another thought about how we can use Workwise, and this is for the instructors. So often, this is not our bailiwick of knowing all these nuts and bolts about about career exploration. So this is possibly something we can use ourselves and work on exercises in a study circle and consider what concepts should we employ with our particular students and in our classroom context. What new resources do we want to share with our students? And it can also help enrich us as we dialogue with WIOA partners, that we have a stronger understanding of the ultimate goal and how to get there. And so we can be working together. Now, I know that Sue is going to tell me about what questions you have in a little bit, so I hope you've gotten questions for me. I love answering questions. I can also be available at my email if we don't end up with enough time in this program. But Sue's going to tell you a little bit more about this webinar special. So I want to thank you all for attending. Here's my email here. If you want the SMART goal exercise, you can email me at cmcampbell@goldappleservices.com. And I really thank you for listening to me today, and I look forward to answering questions and being of further support to you. And I'm now going to turn this over to the next person. So I'm going to stop the sharing the screen, and somebody else is going to take this up. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Cynthia. This is Sue. I want to thank Cynthia for presenting and also thank COABE for hosting this webinar. And we hope you've gained a lot of knowledge on the WIOA requirements and about our new Workwise series. So Sharon, if you could just put that slide up for a second, or not a second, put the slide up that I had sent to you.
Yes, I'd be glad to. Hold on one second here.
Okay, and then we'll go over, we don't have a lot of questions, but I'll try to go over the ones that I was able to see. So if anyone is interested in the books, one of the questions was, are preview copies available? And yes, we can send you a preview copy. You could call the 800 number, 448-8878. We also have a 20% discount until the end of October. And you can use the promotion code CWEEB17. And our normal price of a 10-pack of these is $43.50. So the special price would be $35 through the end of October. One of the questions, this is for you, Sharon, was would they be able to watch the presentation later?
Yes, so we are recording and we'll archive this as well.
Okay, and then someone else just asked about an email. It would be nrp@proliteracy.org would be our email address. We had a lot of questions about the grade level. The books are written at a pre-HSE level, so that is a level 6 through 8. We asked when the academic skills books would be available. Right now, the reading and the writing are, but the math will not be available till probably early November. The ELL level was another question, and that would be graded more towards the intermediate ELL level. These aren't specifically correlated to work keys or any type of specific standards. The authors did a lot of work with workplaces and talked about the type of skills employers were looking for. So we tried to build those types of skills in at that 6 to 8 reading level. So I think that covered most of the questions. I didn't really see too many others. Could you please repeat the email for the SMART goals, Cynthia?
I would be happy to. That is cmcampbell@goldappleservices.com, and that will be on the slides. So when you get, and the slides will be available. And I saw somebody else asking if the math, and thank you, Sharon, if the math and the, not the math, the reading and the writing were available now. They are available now. It's just the math.
They are, yes.
So reading and writing's available. The first 3 books in the series that cover soft skills, they are actually in second printing. So we're happy to share that with you, that they've gone into second printing, and those are available.
And then someone else asked, can a sample copy be requested online? That you do have to call for. We don't have a way to request that on the website.
Okay, so someone had, do you have an expected time frame for the teaching of the different lessons in the book? That's a good question. As you go through the lessons in the book, and as a teacher, I tend to like to dig deep instead of cover everything. So I think it really depends on where your students start out in this. With each of the units, I would probably depend, if you have, I would say with each of the units, just off the top of my head, I would consider spending 2 to 3, not each of the units, each of the lessons, maybe spend 2 to 3 hours digging deeply in it, about 2 hours if you want to dig deeply in it. I wouldn't race through these things because you're really asking people to do some harder reflection. And sometimes with our learners, that takes a certain amount of encouragement, and it takes time to think. So I encourage you to let them work on having the time to think, if that makes if that helps you, Valerie. I know Valerie Phil asked that question. Any other? Sue, are there any other questions you think I should answer?
Not that I'm seeing, Cynthia. So Sharon, shall we turn it back to you?
That's great. Well, thank you both so much. Again, thank you to New Readers Press Pro Literacy for their sponsorship of this webinar, and thank you, Cynthia, for an excellent job today. And to everybody,
Dorsey asked how many books for $43.50. That's 10 books for $43.50. It's a lot like the Score Boost series. So
thank you, Cynthia. Okay. Well, to everybody who took the time to join us, we appreciate your time. You will receive a certificate of participation in the email shortly. This webinar will be on our website along with the PowerPoint that went with it that Cynthia used. So all the details that you're seeing here and throughout the webinar will be available there for you as well. So with that, I'd like to say thank you all, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Bye now.
Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Was that okay?